Welcome to the Sustainability Interest Group at CalEPA, where we focus on grassroots circular economy and climate action. Before we begin, I encourage everyone to use the raise hand feature in Teams to ask a question, and feel free to ask questions or add comments in chat, since I'll also be screening chats. I'm very happy to welcome our guest, Craig McNamara. Craig is going to discuss how you can apply regenerative agricultural principles in your own garden. And I'll leave it to him to describe what regenerative agriculture is. But Craig McNamara served as president of the California State Board of Food and Agriculture from 2011 to 2017. He served on the American Farmland Trust, Menus of Change, Roots of Change, and many other organizations. He has practiced sustainable farming since co-founding Sierra Orchards in 1980, which is now a 450-acre farm primarily producing organic walnuts in Winters, California. Craig is also the founder of the Center for Land-Based Learning, a nonprofit whose mission is to inspire, educate, and cultivate future generations of farmers, agricultural leaders, and natural resource stewards. In his 2022 memoir, Because Our Fathers Lied, a memoir of truth and family from Vietnam to today, Craig writes about reconciling with his father's role as Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War, life and death issues reflected in his passion for sustainable farming. So Craig, I'm very happy to have you join our group. To start, can you tell us what is regenerative agriculture?
So yes, many thanks for the kind invitation to join you all today, and happy to provide a view into regenerative agriculture. And what I most enjoy is our interaction today. So whatever questions come to you during this conversation, I can rattle on. But even before giving a definition of today's regenerative agriculture, would it be okay if I just framed California agriculture for us, so that as master gardeners or people dedicated to finding home and individual solutions to our changed climate and to our water world, I'd just like to look at the state in which we live in right now. And as many of you recognize, California is the fourth largest agricultural economy in the world. I always pause when I say that, because if we look at the number one, that would be the United States in its entirety. And then number two might be China. Three might be all of Europe. Four might be Brazil. And then comes California. And here we are in the Sacramento region, the capital of this amazing network of agriculture. And how many farms do you think there are in California agriculture today? It's not as many as you might think. Actually, Karen Ross, our beloved Secretary of Agriculture, joined us around our dinner table last night, my wife and I, because we were hosts to the Coro Fellows, and that's a group of young fellows who are working in public policy. So Karen joined us because it's their Ag Week, and she mentioned that the most recent statistic is that there's 68,000 farms in California. So what I want to pause on here for a moment is, if I've got the statistics here from USDA, only, and let me get the right number here, only 6,400 of those farms bring in a gross revenue of $1 million. And I pause on that because all farms are important. Your farms, your backyards, your gardens, all farms are important to the economy and the well-being of our state. But less than 6,500 are producing the majority of the fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts that California is not only exporting to the other 59 states, but also around the world. So we are an amazing engine. And if you just look at certain crops like almond crops, so everybody saw the almond bloom that occurred in February, and I hope the almond industry has a good year this year without frost and damage from the rains. California grows 85% of the world almonds. Oh my God, that's huge. That's in California. We have about 9 million irrigated acres, and 1.6 of those are almonds. And I don't know if you're local, you probably pronounce it almonds. I grew up on the East Coast, and so I'm an import into California, so I still call it almonds. And I'm interested in it because, getting back to your question about regenerative, we've been an organic operation, an organic walnut operation. We started farming in 1980, and we transitioned to organic in the early 1990s. And going back to almonds, 1.6 million acres, there are less than 16,000 acres of those that are organic. And I can't quite put my arms around that. The demand seems to be high, but we can talk about some of the challenges there. So let's think of regenerative here for a second. Do you all think that that's a new word? I wonder if our listeners resonate, if that word resonates from times past.
I should kind of step in to say your audience primarily here is people who are actively enforcing to reduce the amount of pesticides in their environment, reduce water use, clean the air, improve products, improve the circular economy. So you're probably preaching to the choir to some extent, but I'm not sure we're doing it in our own lives, and I think that's ideally the goal, to be able to walk the walk.
Right. So I see one listener saying that they've heard of it more recently, and I would agree with that. And I think we should, as we get our arms around our discussion today, we should think about words that are confusing to us as individuals as we go ahead and either purchase foods that are important or support farms. But regenerative to me means the holistic approach to growing food. And so if we look at the most important one is our soil health. So organic agriculture really focuses on soil health. I was just out in our orchard yesterday. All of you are familiar with cover crops, the leguminous plants that take, well, I always ask people, when you take that big breath in, what did we breathe in? And as you know, it's about 74% nitrogen. So if we can take that nitrogen from the air and fix it in the soils, your home tomatoes, your cranshaw melons, your bell peppers, and my organic walnut trees benefit tremendously. I was out digging up some of the fava beans and bell beans, and you could see the nodules on the roots. And as you probably know, the microbes that are in the soil, the billions of microbes that are in the soil, when they feed on those nodules and die, the nitrogen is naturally released. So it's just this wonderful slow release of fertility. And of course, the biomass. Some of these cover crops will grow, bell beans will grow 5 feet tall. So that creates tilth and flocculates the soil. It just makes good, healthy soil. So regenerative agriculture, let's focus on soil health. Then let's look at animal health. In our orchards, one of the best gifts of my career has been that 2 of our adult millennial kids have come back into the farm full time. And Sean came back probably 9 years ago. He introduced grazing sheep. So we have at some points had up to 4,000 sheep grazing, mob grazing on the orchard. So every day or two, he extends the electric fences, the portable electric fences, and we mob graze the orchard. We get the manure, the urine, and they mow down the cover crops, which is fantastic. So soil health is number one. We want to ensure good husbandry of our animals. Our daughter Emily had 1,000 pastured organic chickens from which she was harvesting eggs. That's a great rotation. So now we've got soil health, animal health, and then probably most importantly is the human health of the farm labor. So our farm worker community, we want to ensure in a regenerative package that we are providing a living wage. We know that people are not food insecure, that they are food secure, and that they have housing. So those, to me, are the 3 pillars of what I'll call regenerative ag. Now, where does organic fit into that? Where does sustainable fit into that? And the big question, is there a certification for regenerative agriculture? And I am here to tell you there is. It's called the Regenerative Organic Association. And my daughter Emily spent literally 2 months putting together the application package to be regeneratively, organically certified. And it was, I'm going to share with you, it was a little onerous, to be honest, but it's important that you, the consumer or the grower, knows that what we're doing here really lives up to the standards. And you all are the researchers and the enforcers and the scientists who are going to help us ensure that what we do on the farm is appropriately managed. So there's a long definition.
I think on our scale, we have a few members who have their own chicken coops, and they're getting the benefits of the nitrogen from their little chicken coops compared to your goats, but
Sure,
very similar. Yeah.
sure. Now, one thing that I'm sure you're aware of as a group, in 2014, I actually have a photograph here. I'll bring it down here. Governor Brown signed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And that was an amazing, very important act. I wish I could see all of you to raise your hands. How many of you are aware of that? I suspect almost everyone. It was not particularly popular amongst the agricultural community because California was the last state of the Western states to finally put in legislation that would look at our water future and try to ensure that we have a sustainable water future. We do not have a sustainable water future. We have overly tapped our resources for the last 60 years. So SIGMA is an attempt to bring local water basins together to solve the future of water. That means that in the future, I won't be able to just go out in my orchard and drill a well and pump to my heart's delight. I will have controls put on me. And the reason I bring this up to you all, both as CalEPA people, as well as interested in gardeners and climate change, water is the lifeblood of this state. And as I mentioned, we have been unsustainably tapping it for decades. And having done so, we have expanded agriculture into the San Joaquin Valley, into the west side. So everybody's driven down Route 5, going over the Tehachapi's and into LA. What you witness when you're going south is west of the aqueducts, west of Route 5, somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million acres of irrigated agriculture will be going out of production in the next decade or so. That's a fact. And we, as Californians, need to figure out how we're going to manage that. And that's going to go out of production because it never was sustainable from the beginning. And so now, as we've gone through significant periods of drought, and let's pause for a second, we are not out of the drought. I mean, I just read, as you did today, the snowpack is voluminous. We haven't seen something like this since the beginning of recorded of snow count. But that doesn't get us out of drought. And so part of my water, what I would like to talk about during our water conversation is what can we do as gardeners, as EPA specialists, and as farmers to ensure a better water future. Is that something that you all would be interested in talking about?
It's not quite at the garden level, but we can certainly go there.
Well, it is in the garden level in the sense that you won't be gardening if we don't manage it right. Statewide. And I have friends just like you all, who you all are experts in your field. And I have experts in my field. And sometimes when it comes, well, water is the most contentious thing we could ever talk about. Oh, somebody wants to talk about gray water. Okay, yep. Let's begin there because that's on the home scale. So I live in Solano County, and I was just looking at this Agriculture and Art Lifestyle magazine, Solano and Yolo County here. And lo and behold, there's a great article on simple gray water systems bring laundry water to your landscape. I thought it was fascinating. So it's a way that we can recycle our wastewater from our washing machine. And it points out a group called Gray Water Action. And so Sustainable Solano is working with Gray Water Action to bring hands-on workshops to Solano County. And there are simple systems for reuse. So let's do that together. Another thing that I noticed, and I love this quote, this is called Blue Barrel. And this quote here is really great. Rain is a gift, harvest it. Let's all work on that. So it's actual, looks like 30-gallon tanks or something so that we can harvest rain when it comes and get it into our garden. So that's called Blue Barrel Rainwater Catchment Systems. Are any of you using that? Are any of you recycling water? 55-gallon tanks, I see that.
Yeah, I am. I've got 10 of them and
oh my
2 large totes.
Great. So how do you bring water through your gutter systems, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so the 55-gallon ones are all connected together from Blue Barrel. And then it's hooked to my rain gutter, just the very front one, because I have a large roof.
That's neat. And so you must have a little screen or filtering system to keep out leaves and other debris?
Yeah, so it comes with like a little plastic piece you can put in your downspout after you cut your downspout, and then it has a plastic tubing. I need to upgrade to their newer one or just go to the hardware store because their previous one was clear, so algae is growing in it. And then you have a little screen you put on that before it comes into that.
That's great.
Tube.
And then does that go into like a drip irrigation or furrow irrigation in your garden, or?
I don't have it hooked to a drip system. You would need low pressure drip, so I just use a watering can for watering my pots, and I have an overflow to flow into my rain garden. I have 3 circular rain gardens that are connected together.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like a wonderful contribution to water conservation. Are others using recycled water? You might be the.
This is Stephanie. I have 4 rain barrels at my house, but it's similar to Jeanette, where it's not really hooked up to an irrigation system right now. And so I'll, fill like buckets or attach a hose or something like that to it. But I find that it's somewhat dirty water, and particles come from the roof and things like that. So it's interesting to hear kind of about the filtration options. I hadn't really looked into that, so that would be good.
That pauses me for a moment. Once again, back to Karen Ross, our Secretary of Agriculture. Karen formed a study group, I'm thinking it was 6 or 7 years ago. And when I was with the State Board of Food and Agriculture, I participated, and we went to Israel. And actually, I took my middle son with me to look at, Israel has been such an amazing technological leader in terms of water conservation. As a matter of fact, all of our drip technology for the last 55 years has come from what's done in Israel. What was amazing to me, and most of Israel is a desert, was the use of reused water. So sewage water that had been secondarily and tertiarily treated all throughout the country. You'll see huge pipes that are purple, painted purple, to designate that this is recycled water, are being used for agriculture. And, you know, I think as home gardeners, as citizens of California, we should be pushing our electeds to advance this technology, because we can appropriately be using it on a citywide, like Davis or Sacramento could be implementing this. I've heard that it's very expensive, and my response to expense is everything's expensive. Not embracing technology today is expensive. So I'd be interested to see what you all think about the possibility of, you know, using recycled water sometime in your gardens, and how we can, as citizens, push for that.
I have seen one time where the city announced a subsidized rain barrel, and I was surprised that they can get up to, I think, $160, and maybe half off. And you go to the website, and it was gone. They were all gone. The supplies were gone the next day. So they are popular, but you got to be on their list to know when it's
The radar.
available. Yeah. So
The radar.
Aren't some, I feel like I've heard like some cities are trying to ban rainwater collection because I'd have to look it up again, and maybe someone else on here knows, like maybe it was taking away like in their perspective, it was taking away a resource that maybe belonged to the city.
That's interesting.
It's like, it was interesting argument. And then I do believe I saw a recent study, I can't remember if it was through UC Davis or someone else, but yeah, taking the wastewater and going through the tertiary like filtration and then using it on crops. So I do feel that there was a recent US study on that. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I just thank you for bringing that up. It seems to me something that we just must do. Now, as a farmer, and some of you might know the watershed that flows out of Lake Berryessa. So to the west of us, Lake Berryessa and Monticello Dam were created in the late 50s, both for flood prevention as well as water storage. And so what flows out from that is Puta Creek, P-U-T-A-H Creek. So that is our watershed. That is what feeds most of our aquifers. We have early rights, water rights, so we on our farm can pump from Puta Creek and flood our walnut orchards. So that's the bigger picture of water banking. And it's very important for California that we do that. I know that the governor 10 days ago has allowed, with the heavy rains that we've had, has encouraged more of this type of usage. I'm sure you in your gardens want to capture as much water as you can, whether it's recycled or natural rainwater. So, and I think as gardeners, we need to lead our communities, and we need to lead our community leaders into doing what's right for California. And it's not easy. I bet just on this call, I think there's 36 of us. We might have 36 different opinions about something as complex as the Delta bypass. So the Delta tunnels, whether it's 2 tunnels, 1 tunnel, no tunnels, back to Jerry Brown in the 70s, 80s, the peripheral canal. I just think as people dedicated to food production, and to environmental health, it's incumbent upon us to be well-informed and articulate and active in our pursuits. So I'm open to any questions that you have. I see some Better Home composters. Oh, I got a great Christmas gift from my wife this year. It's a loamy. Has anybody heard of a loamy? I'd be interested in knowing how much energy my loamy uses. So for those of you who don't know, a loamy is a device that just in our kitchen, we have a canister which all of our compost goes into. And I used to take it out and compost it here on the farm. Honestly, I'm not proud of it. I was not a great composter. I should have been. But now that canister, whether it's got onions, bell peppers, strawberry tops, whatever it is, goes into the Lomi canister, and through a heat and revolution process in 5 hours, turns it into pretty rich compost. Has anybody been using it at home? Stephanie? No?
Do you have to ship it back to?
No, not me. I've seen it, and I heard recently about a similar one with a different name. I can't remember what it was. Yeah. But like you, yes, I have a pile of compost, and I'm not always great about turning it and taking care of it. But I know some people on here are really good about it.
Yeah, compost is just the best. I guess we all have our lazy areas, and that's kind of my lazy area, I guess. I wish I were better at it.
I'm looking at getting a mill. They haven't come out with them yet in California, but it doesn't turn it to compost. It just chops it up and dehydrates it, and then you can use it for a feed supplement for your chickens.
Right.
And I'm thinking of using that and then throwing it in my worm bin, just because sometimes it gets so gross I don't even want to take it out to the worm bin. It's straight into the green waste.
We used to
also gross.
I did see a question: does it use a lot of energy? I believe it does. It just it's churning and heating and for 5 hours. So somebody says I freeze my food scraps before it goes. Yeah, that's great. How is everybody irrigating these days, their gardens?
I do have a drip in mine,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it is a challenge for a lot of people to, you got to either hire somebody or sweat a pipe to get it to connect to your home system, and you got to know how much can fit on the same line, and it can be complicated. So
I'm guessing that the majority of you all today are Sacramento citizens, or some people live outside of Sac.
At least in the county, possibly, or Yola.
We have some in Southern California.
Yeah, right.
Oh, are there water restrictions in your communities?
Not right now.
Not for watering your vegetable garden. Like in Sacramento, we already into the 1 day a week watering, but that's for your grass, your lawn.
Right.
It's different for trees and vegetables.
Really? That's interesting.
And if you have a drip system, I think you can bypass. You can still use it when others can't use the sprinkler that sprays it into the air, kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's a good point. That I would assume that you're probably on drip irrigation for the vegetables and other plants.
By the way, I want to credit Stephanie Parent, who told me about you and your land-based Center for Land-Based Learning. She took your seven-month course.
Stephanie
gave a presentation on it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of that endeavor. You probably know more than I today. I bet there's over 150 graduates, or maybe close to more than that.
That's a good question. I don't know how many. We could do a quick guesstimate of it's. So now was it the 11th class started?
Yeah.
Earlier this year. And so if we assume 20 people times 10 or 11 classes, that's 220, but I think it varies each year. So
and I think the beauty of it is that, well, maybe for all of us, our visions have changed a bit. When you think about urban agriculture, I bet many people 5 years or 10 years ago thought, what's urban agriculture? How is that going to contribute to our wellness or to our community sourcing foods? It's really significant. You all know in your communities, but I know in Sacramento, urban agriculture is really important, and we have some really shining stars. We have some great graduates from the California Farm Academy who, like Stephanie, spent 7 months in a training program and then are doing fantastic things, including right now I think the Center for Land-Based Learning purchased a mobile refrigerated farm stand, a truck, a food truck that goes around with refrigerated produce, which is really neat. So very, very proud of that.
Greg, I'm curious, in your your memoir, which I recommend, by the way, a very good book, you talk about the three sisters. You took a journey through Central and South America. You helped with subsistence farming in farms in the mid 70s or early 70s, and you said you wanted to kind of carry that experience forward. The three sisters, what is it, beans, corn, and squash. But I suppose that doesn't quite mesh with having a walnut orchard so much. Have you been able to kind of carry that forward in any other way?
Well, thank you so much for bringing that forward. It's really important to me because that inspiration of learning from subsistence farmers in South America and Latin America really inspired me to become a farmer. I went to UC Davis and studied plant and soil science and came out with a little bit of, college learning, no practical learning. And I was so fortunate to find a Chinese farmer in Dixon, Tan Lum, who hired me. I worked with Tan for 3 years, and during that time, so that would be 1978, the late 70s, I started a produce operation and actually had a roadside stand in Dixon. If any of you remember where George's Orange is, which was one of those old California cement orange stands, right next to it was a gas station, and I had a roadside produce stand. And the reason I mention this is my goal was to get fresh, nutritious food to the people who need it most in inner cities. So we have Sacramento, we have Oakland, we have Berkeley, San Francisco. I would try to ship my food there, and that was before farmers markets, that was before CSAs, community-sponsored agriculture, before the time that chefs were rock stars. And I just went broke so many times, and I said, I have to get out of the fresh market. I grew cranshaw melons and bell peppers and tomatoes, and I wanted to find a crop that was less perishable, less labor, more mechanized, that I had more control over it. And I said, what about walnuts? So that was my trajectory from the time that you mentioned to where we are today. And I want to interject something and see what you think. We've all heard the term food deserts. Someone mentioned to me years ago, those are not food deserts. It's actually food apartheid, because people in food deserts, they don't necessarily want to be there. They don't want the fact that they can't get to a grocery store. It's just the fact that grocery stores don't see them as lucrative markets or viable markets. And I think there again, we on this Zoom today can change that by our actions, by your gardens, by urban agriculture. So there's my soapbox.
And somebody, Craig Boonis, I think, suggested fit homeless people could be partnered with farming work, room and board for physical, mental, and spiritual healing. Here's an article that I think my mother gave me, Karen Kane catalog, talking about just that in an urban setting.
That's what we can do. And that's the essence of what you're doing in your home gardens, is providing food for your families and your community. And that, in this time of huge challenge, and we're all challenged, that gives us hope. And my goal, and let me tell you, I'll share with you, as a walnut grower today, as an organic walnut grower, we're hanging on by our fingernails. A pound of walnut meats, as a grower, I was receiving $6.50 a pound of walnut meats in 2017. This past year, I got $2.50. I've cut our costs as far as I can cut them. But if I can't get my revenue up to my break-even point, you won't, America's going to lose growers like ourselves. I have 3 neighbors who are going out of business. They've been in business 45 years each. So what can we do? What can you do? You can educate yourselves, which is what we're doing today, sharing back and forth. We can educate our community. Raley's, for example, in the Sacramento region has done a lot to support the types of regenerative agriculture that we're talking about. So shop at Raley's, support local foods producers.
Just to back up, again, back to your book, Steven Spielberg was interviewed recently, and he was asked what movie you watch other than your own the most. And he said, Lawrence of Arabia. And he said, it's because it's such an intensely personal story that could have been a story on its own, but it's also it's this huge scenic action. And so it's the juxtaposition of the personal to the gargantuan. And I think your book, your memoirs, is also likewise very uniquely American, set against the Vietnam War era, and a very intensely personal story, very your physical journey to Central and South America, but your spiritual journey, I guess, literally from the White House. You talk about the center of capitalism to seeing Fidel Castro speak in socialist Chile, and that whole your journey to becoming an organic farmer is quite the story. So I recommend your book, but
Thanks.
I'm really curious how hard it was to become an organic farmer. I didn't realize. I guess you said you started in the 1990s.
Well, thank you. That was a really genuine compliment. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I went to college in 1969 and dropped out because of the Vietnam War, and because of maybe like some of you, at different times we question our country, and I think we should question our country. I'm a complete believer in this country. I will do whatever I can, but I felt that my service to this country was not in fighting a war that I felt was wrong. So I had to find myself during that time. I was born in 1950, so I'm coming up on 73 years old. So I was right in the middle of Vietnam. So my dropping out of college and leaving the country was a method of searching. And for me, so fortunately, I found food production. And I just feel, I want to reemphasize, I feel so grateful that 2 of my adult children want to continue that. What I want to be thoughtful about is the risk too great? We've been farming on this farm for 43 years. Is the risk so great right now with our changed climate that they will not have, it's not a bright future, it's not success. I want them to have a genuine connectivity to the land which they live on. They live on this farm. And I want them to be able to produce nutritious and needed food, but they also have to be subsistent. They also have to survive. And I don't know if we can do that. And this is the first time in my career. I mean, farmers are like this, right? We've got bad times and good times. This is a really challenging time.
Stephanie.
I just want to ask, have you thought about shifting to different types of production, or your children, because relating this to a larger issue, I'm assuming walnuts take a lot of water just like almonds do, and
Yep.
that almonds, California is like the #1 exporter to the rest of the world. And
Right.
so just thinking about those larger issues of the global world we live in, the
Right.
amount of water that certain crops use, maybe share some of your thoughts on that area.
Stephanie, you have really opened up an important dynamic. We all heard, big news in the New York Times articles 4 or 5 years ago, an almond, a gallon a nut. I've got news for you. Same thing for a walnut. It takes 3 acre-feet. It takes that amount of applied water a year to grow an acre of almonds or walnuts. It also takes that same amount of water to grow an acre of tomatoes for processing. The difference is in the drought years, you can not irrigate a tomato field. You have to irrigate an almond and walnut field. And going back to Route 5, as you travel down, you see many orchards that are taken out. I've seen orchards here in winters that are being taken out that are young orchards. So I think you're also, Stephanie, getting to the point, so California almonds are enjoyed around the world. Is it right to be exporting water? That's a business decision that each farmer, he or she makes. I think what we need to do, Stephanie, is pivot and diversify. I've never added value to the crop that I grow. So in other words, we grow the walnut, and once we hull it, wash it, and dry it, we send it away in truckloads of 25 tons to the processor. They in turn shell it, case it, and if you buy an organic walnut at Trader Joe's, that's probably ours. So what we need to do is, up our brand, put a nice package together, and start direct marketing. And that's going to take my kids. And that's going to take an investment to do that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but we cannot continue to do business as we've done it. That's a for sure.
So you should be the Blue Diamond of walnuts. And
we need to be, well, here's what I'd like to do. We just spent a significant amount of money and time to get this regenerative organic certification. What I want to do is start marketing our crop directly to Patagonia provisions. So Patagonia has provisions which they use for camping and trail mixes. So I think that market and that buyer is going to be willing to pay the price that it takes us to grow our crop the way we do.
I was just watching a bodybuilder talk about the 17 foods that he eats every day, and walnuts was one of them because it has the highest concentration of omega-3 or something.
Omega-3 fatty acids.
Here's
I'm open this bag here. When you take a fresh walnut, I love them, and you squeeze it, 50% at harvest time, 50% of that nut is oil. That's the omega-3 fatty acids. That's why walnuts are so good for you. And this amount, that's about 3 ounces. 3 ounces a day will lower your blood cholesterol by 12%. And in addition, research is demonstrating that regular consumption does reduce early onset. So there's so many, your bodybuilder is right. Blueberries, walnuts, obviously fish oils, but I'm not here to market walnuts, but do eat your walnuts.
Jennifer, you have a question?
Yeah, I think a lot about subsistence farming. I was a small organic farmer through the 90s or part of the 90s, late 80s. And now I'm just a West Davis homeowner with garden everywhere. And,
Great.
And so what I think about is with climate change, with concerns about food supply, what can I grow at my house that will supplement whatever I might be able to get at the grocery store? And I think about almonds and walnuts. I don't have either of those trees, but I think of them as protein sources, perhaps. If I'm not up for raising animals in my West Davis backyard, then what else can I do? And I think garbanzo beans and other dried beans, and I think about tree nuts. So I think differently about the water impact for farms than I do about what can I grow that will sustain me individually should there be issues with supply chains.
Well, I think you touched, Jennifer, on some really important things. You looked at your beans, and when you were speaking, fava beans, Magnus peas, that's what I mentioned in our cover crops. So you're getting the, double your money. You're getting a nice product for yourselves. If you have some chickens and animals and rabbits or whatever, that area of is so great. I'm missing apricots. Winters where I live was magical with apricots. As a matter of fact, we have a railroad spur, and the old iron bridge. Please do come out to Winters. It's such a lovely place. It will welcome you. There's fun places to walk along Pewter Creek. We have a railroad bridge dating from 1906. We used to have a station. I wish that the town fathers didn't take it down in the 50s. And ice packing houses, so you would put the fresh apricots on the rail cars, pack them with ice, and send them to New York City. But I'm thinking, in your backyard, a Blenheim apricot would be lovely. And friends who have them at Christmas time give us their canned apricot jam. Oh, Lordy, I'll eat that with a spoon. It's too good to even put it on bread.
I think another extension of what I was saying is education oriented, because I was a teacher. I had students in your SLUES program, the Students, Landowners, Education and Watershed Stewardship. And I think a lot about educating just my neighbors. And so I have a huge portion of my garden in the front yard. And Don Shore from Redwood Barn Nursery has asked for people to send in your front yard garden photos, and he's pushing let's educate our neighbors that you can have a garden out front, and it can look really nice.
Well, Jenna, you're absolutely right, and I'm going to take that. I'm going to tease out your thought there to the larger politic of the world that we live in. We have, as Californians, we can't remain sedentary. We have to make decisions. We're going to have to spend the money. We're going to have to work with our electeds to implement the change that we need. We can't sit back. I mean, I'll tell you, and I'm sure, like I said earlier, I'm sure there are people on the call here who disagree with me. I'm a conveyance person. I believe that we need to put in some sort of conveyance under or around the Delta to get water to Southern California. And I'm a one-state person. I'm not a two-state person here. And I'm not a red or a blue. I'm a one-state person. And we've got 23 million people that live south of the Tehachapi's. They need water. Our ag lands need water. Our environment needs water. Our birds in Delta smelt. So the most obvious thing for us right now is build Sites Reservoir. Sites is a reservoir that's been on the planning book since the late 1970s. It's up in above us here, up by Williams. It's not a dammed up project. It doesn't dam up a watershed. What it does is it takes water from the Sacramento River in times when there's plenty, like there has been the last 3 months, stores it for times when we need it. I'm a lifelong member of Sierra Club, and boy, I'll tell you, Sierra Club hates the word R, reservoirs. So back to Jennifer's point, let's inform ourselves and let's talk to our neighbors, because it's all going to get down to a vote. So there's another part of my my peach basket for you.
And if you saw the movie The Big Short or read the book, Michael Burry in that story predicted the Great Recession of 2008. And at the end of that book, he talks about his next investment is almond farms, because water is going to be the next fight. And almond farms, like you said,
Here we are.
are selling to give water to residences, I guess. It's happened
Yeah.
in our, south of Folsom, lots of places around. Yeah.
I have a very dear friend that Julie, my wife, and I went to UC Davis with, Chris Kuchar, who's second, third generation farmer down in Kettleman City. So that's south of Harris Ranch, out of business because he doesn't have enough water. And the buyers of his business are buying his orchards and his lands, not to grow the trees, but because of the water allocation that those acres have.
Right.
So we're in a really challenged place, and we do have options.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left.
My curiosity is anything about the personal homeowner or, backyard grower. Can we do anything to help with
Right.
groundwater recharge aquifers underground? I mean, I've got my, rain gardens, but I think that's not soaking anywhere deep enough to get back to the aquifer. And
I think your encouragement of others, just like you're encouraging us today. Here I am sitting on these articles, but I don't have my catchment bin, so I got to get going. And it's kind of like urban agriculture. It seems like a small gesture, but it's not. We can make we are the change we want to be, and so let's get out and do it.
Keep out the mosquitoes.
Yeah, definitely.
Please don't grow mosquitoes when you save water.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've read recently that sustainable investing over the last nearly 30 years has grown 18-fold. Research shows that over the last 20 years, companies with a clear social purpose, including sustainability, have significantly outperformed the S&P 500. So it does seem like when you get Wall Street involved, that can change things, not just even at the government level.
Yes. Yeah. Good points. Thank you for sharing that.
Let's see, Joanne, how do you keep the squirrels from harvesting the walnuts?
Oh, I mean, do you want my dirty little truth?
Uh-oh.
You're not going to like this.
Poisoning?
Squirrel traps.
Well, here, I'll tell you about squirrels. Squirrels are incredibly damaging to the root systems of walnut trees. So they will burrow down. And the crop that they forage on is huge. So trees can actually tip over because of the degradation. I'm an organic grower. I would not use anticoagulants even if I could, which are poisons, that we can bait. The squirrels now, we have gone to hanging our irrigation lines in our trees, and so those are rubber tubes. The squirrels will walk along those lines and chew into the line to get water. Real pain in the neck. So we ordered from China rubber bowls, and we fill it with water and say, please use the water down on the ground, not up on there. And the dirty little truth is we hunt squirrels, so don't tell anybody, please. But I don't know how else to take care of them. Better than pesticide or yeah, I think that. What about predation, encouraging coyotes? That's a good one. As I told you, my daughter had 1,000 pastured chickens, so the coyote is not the creature we wanted in the orchard. We do put up owl boxes everywhere. Owls are great for gophers, maybe less so for squirrels. Well, I think we're about out of time. We're going to meet again in 2 weeks, and we've talked about over the last several meetings the Gardener's Challenge. So if you have a little project that you're just dying to complete, let's talk about that in our next meeting. But otherwise, I'm going to be talking about how to eat without plastic in your food. I think Craig Lunis suggested, or somebody suggested that idea. We have a lot of upcoming topics that are going to be interesting, but Craig, you've really, I think this has been a very interesting meeting. Somebody's asking, what is the name of your farm? Sierra Orchards. Sierra Orchards. Yes, as you. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you, and what a great job you're doing. And thank you, Stephanie, for your good work, and thank you, all of you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Craig.
Look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.
Thank you.